Welcome back to Final Fantasy XIII. So here we...
wow! Oh my god, an actual colorful environment for once.
Well, to be... Okay. To be fair, we have had a good share of colorful environments, to be fair. This is not...
Remember, that this was also the time where everything on the PS3 Xbox was either super brown or super green. This was actually relatively balanced. Like I said,
remember, as we've mentioned, a lot of the stages have had these washed out color looks.
Yeah, the
ones that actually do have proper color saturation stand out from them.
Even in general, I did mention there is every major color here. It's also a light shade of it. There's never one that's normally saturated, for lack of a better term. Everything is either like pink or violet or slightly darker orange.
Sure, I get that.
I don't mind that. Again, it technically gives the game an identity, but you get the idea that something is still a bit missing. Like I don't think we had too much vibrant red outside of, say, the Brynhildr and the LC Mark I, for example.
Like I said in our Gears of War runs, I don't think there's something inherently wrong with having a darker color palette. I mean, because I think it's one of those cases where, like, again, this applies to everything in life. Like, variety is a spice of life, and if every game is super colorful, a colorful art style would be not special anymore. But if everybody else is doing it, it's like...
Of course, there's a time and place for that stuff, of course. That said, I don't feel like this game was necessarily one for it. Or rather, this game can't make up its mind. And mind you, again, maybe sometimes it's the point of a certain area to have washed out colors. It's just that it never feels like they have a point to it in this game, honestly.
Yeah, basically. Okay, so yeah, now that we're done with Chapter 11, it's back to hallway mentality when it comes to the level design.
Yeah.
Oh, but Pedro, look at all the different ways you can technically get to this point.
Okay, so here's So here's the thing. I'll need Teo to help me with this. You're thinking, we're going to use that little lightning thingy that Lightning used at the beginning of the game, right? That she used to manipulate gravity, right? Apparently this is not the same thing. Teo, could you...
It's in notation of the normal, quote-unquote, troops. Lightning had a personal model attached to her, but as it showcased in the early parts, it worked. It at least was tested only to herself, and she didn't even thought it was possible to work for different people. This is something that a normal Cyclone troops use, and it was showcased with stuff like, say, the cutscene before the Shiva boss fight.
Some of these people are literally doing it head first.
And if I recall correctly, at the end of the previous part, Fang showed up saying that she got it from some of the soldiers.
Again, this sadly is not explained well in the actual game itself, so you'd be forgiven for thinking this is the same.
To me, it's more of another waste of a good concept. Again, this could have allowed some interesting game design, level design.
It's because
it's just wasted.
It's because they used this kind of technology once in the beginning of the game, and now another time in here. Like, it's so easy. I'm not kidding you. By the time I've here's Lightning's catchphrase. Yeah. Okay. Okay. I actually want to talk about that line. Okay. So, much like with Cloud's not interested and Squall's whatever, Toriyama wanted Lightning to have her own equivalent of that. According to Ali Illis, apparently the line in Japanese was some kind of word that didn't really translate properly if you try to use it literally. So they came up with a unique word for. So when it came to her going her own, instead they just went with right. I don't necessarily have a problem with it, but yeah, of all the three that we mentioned, this is probably the least memorable to me.
If I may, I honestly had no idea that was even supposed to be a catchphrase, because the way she says it is so unremarkable that I never get a sense of iconic status with it. Not to mention the fact that this is kind of really the first time she's even saying our supposed catchphrase in this game, mind you.
Well, actually, Jova, she has said it before. It's just that, like you yourself said, the line, like, if you're not paying close attention to it, you will not notice it, like, for the reasons that you've already said. But she does say it but she does say it before, and she does it throughout the entire trilogy, to be fair. So yeah, Toriyama does intend for this to be her not interested equivalent.
Okay.
Alright, if I recall correctly,
if that's the case,
we're recreating the scene that was in the first trailer at E3 2006.
Okay, if that's the case, then I'm sorry. The way that she's used it never seems to suggest that it's a catchphrase, because here's the thing. Right is not usually a special word in any context. Usually right is just what you say when, it's in response to almost anything. Whereas, say, Cloud's not interested, that was something that felt like it had a running element to it, and would also help show his development in character. Similar thing with Squall as well, for as much as I don't care for his localization perspective, the fact that he said whatever less as the plot developed was meant to help show his development. And also did work as a catchphrase or something, especially considering how ludicrous stuff does.
As you just saw earlier... Sorry, go on.
Whereas with Lightning, right. What
It's
about
because
that feels like a catchphrase?
The idea is that she's about to face some kind of challenge, and she just goes, right. As in, like, alright, let's do this. I'm guessing that's what it's supposed to be.
So I'm guessing, Jovi, you think the catchphrase is wrong?
You just saw earlier me execute Lightning's ultimate attack that is unlocked when you unlock what is called Omnia 1.
Yes.
Problem is, if you use it all the problem is, since there's a lack of MP, you can use it at the beginning of every battle. Problem is, every time you use it, you have to listen to Lightning say the exact same line. I am nobody's slave. I am nobody's slave. I am nobody's slave.
And yet, that's probably one of the best ways you're going to be able to breeze through this later part of the game.
Yes and no, because this is a good thing to mention. Each character gets their own equivalent to their limit break, but each gets assigned to usually their specific role that they excel the most. For Lightning, Army of One is, for some reason, occupied on the Occultist, raising the Black Mage equivalent, the Ravager role, which is the Black Mage equivalent, meaning that when it is good and does some damage, it's best to be used to build up the stagger gauge, or when the enemy is actually staggered, to build up the percentage. Not necessary to just do damage on your own. For something like that, you'll probably best to be suited. This means that you use something like Fang's ability, High Wind, which is then used on the commando role. Sayaz also has one, which for some reason originally it was called exactly like Laguna's Limit Break Desperado, but for some reason the localization called it Cold Blood for some moronic reason that I don't understand. It's assigned, like I said, to the Ravager role. Hold on. This is actually the cutscene that was the early cutscene that was showcased at E3 2006.
So the cavalry's here to,
They're here for Orphan. If it's close to the Fal'Cie Eden, they're probably headed for the heart of the Sanctum.
Right.
That's another thing. The Fal'Cie literally have the cavalry also trying to get to Orphan. And sure, maybe they may not be strong enough to take out Orphan, but why aren't they making it easier for them to get to Orphan, to at least weaken Orphan, to make taking out Orphan all the more easier for the actual SC? Again, their plan is to essentially take Orphan out to that Cocoon, and they themselves will die. Because apparently Orphan literally is what keeps all the Fal'Cie alive. Because according to the plot...
Wait, so the Behemoth was using his standing on two legs position, and now all of a sudden he's back in all fours? Great God, Moody! like seriously.
Limit Break instead is also the Ravager role, and shockingly is almost
Hello.
the animation that uses Beth's Holy 510 for some reason.
Hello, director, editor, can someone make sure that the plot points keep straight from shot to shot? No?
I don't know at this point. But, Tio, question, sir?
Yes, go on.
Is there any explanation why taking out Orphan takes out all other fallacy, Cocoon,
He's,
Impulse?
like we mentioned a couple of parts ago, think of it kind of like Horizon Zero Dawn. He's the central control unit.
Yeah. Kill the brain and the whole body dies. That's the logic.
Oh, true, I get that, but why does he take down both Pulse and Cocoon fallacy?
Because the Falsies were essentially created with the same idea in mind and then were split between Pulse and Lindsay.
Yeah.
So Orphan is, I guess, that one divergent point from which they all
Remember,
sprung
the Falsies were not even supposed to warring against each other. It was essentially the idea of Orphan and Barthandelus, the idea of placing, Pulse and Lindsay to an extent, also to placing each other against, and pushing the respective people and Falsi against each other.
So why did Orphan...
Like he said, the system is intentionally broken and it wasn't supposed to work like this.
Alright guys, let's put...
Orphan's apparently pretty biased in Cocoon's favor.
Alright guys, let's try and stop Bart Daisley from destroying Cocoon, even though we have no idea how to do that.
Basically. Yeah, like you said, High Wind is Fang's ultimate attack is for Ravager. For Commando,
She's the Dragoon of the party, so obviously that would be her ultimate attack, yeah.
It's ideally to be used as a finisher, basically.
Oh my god,
once
look,
you build up enough stacker
NPCs!
gauge.
Well, let's take a look at it.
Some of them.
Alright.
The only other two exceptions, because like I said, most of them...
There you go.
There we go. It's basically just a traditional Dragoon jump. With that exposure at the end.
That's sadly a thing. If you're looking for big fanfare and animations in the equivalent to Limit Breaks, there's Army of One, but most of them are very simple.
And hell, even Army of One, I would argue, is not that great, to be honest with you.
Says Cold Blood is basically just him spraying towards a specific area. The other two exceptions are Snow, which is instead of placing the Sentinel role, if I recall correctly, which is Sovereign Fist. It's almost identical to High Wind. He basically launches himself in the air and puts a fist to the ground, that's it. And then there's Vanille, which she has the spell Death in her Saboteur role, which has a small bit of the chance to insta-kill almost every enemy in the game. Including something that I will mention in the final part, but I did mention in the original run.
Exactly.
Beautiful.
The problem is, as Theo just said, there's a very small chance, so don't think you can rely on it. Not really.
It is good to cheese to be cheesing the turtles in the RTL step if you want to gain actually a substantial amount of Crystarium points. Because again, the way the things work with the turtles, the bigger one, the smaller ones you find them as a normal enemy, but the bigger ones have separate health bar for their legs. If you take out the legs, the turtle will actually fall down and be stumbled for a very long time, and then is your chance for Vanille to spam the death spell, and if it manages to connect, you have just gained a lot of experience points.
So you literally stagger and hobble.
If it doesn't, you can just use the reset button to reset essentially the battle like nothing happened. Because again, like I said, the gameplay is broken in a sense, but you can exploit this kind of trick, whatever it's is actually decent or not.
So, Shiroi, having a good time?
Nah. I mean, this is harmless at this part, at least.
Okay, let me put I think it's a weird way to put it. At this point in the game, things are technically revving up. So, you should feel a sense of heightened hype or growing exhilaration.
And like I said various times over the course of this run, Jova, it's impossible to do that if you don't know how the hell are we even going to achieve our goal.
Okay, I'll be okay. How many parts are we away from the end?
4
parts.
Really?
Okay. Okay. Here's what I think of the story so far. It's not good at all, but maybe the other two games make this one feel worse. But so far, I think its badness is a bit exaggerated. It's not good. It's not good. But the way you guys talked about it, and in fact the way a lot of Final Fantasy fans talked about it made it sound like as though it was the worst RPG in the history of ever.
It's because
so far all I'm getting is just really, really dull story. Like, I've seen worse. I've seen Time in Eternity and Fairy
Actually,
Festival.
hold on. Put it in this specific
Well-
context, Wibbs. Of the Final Fantasy game we have covered so far, the one that you actually have seen, 7, 1, 8, and this. How do you think this story relates to those?
Well, I mean, at the very least, it doesn't piss me off as much as 8.
Interesting.
Wow.
To Dubs' credit, there are quite a lot of shit in Final Fantasy VIII that is
And I would also say
problematic.
As much as the story is this mess that it is, and the gameplay is so terrible, on a presentation and world building, I would take this over 8 on that color level.
It's one of those things where, okay, look at the Final Fantasy VIII has that thing with Quist is secretly wanting to bone Squall, and despite being technically his sister figure, which is, it's all.
Don't you see, Pedro? It was sisterly love that she mistook.
Yes, that's the problem.
Absolutely.
That's the problem, and in my opinion, every single thing about Renoir is all kinds of wrong. But
There you are, ladies and gentlemen. Probably for the first time in history, someone's compared 8 and 13 in some aspect, and 13 actually came out the better.
well, actually, plenty of people have done that, Dwebs. Actually,
Yeah.
but here's the thing. Here's the thing about Dwebs. Here's the thing about this, Dwebs. Let me mention this for you. Yes, of course. Yeah, if you compare this to Time and Eternity, yeah, Time and Eternity is far worse. Thing is, unlike Time and Eternity, which was a new IP by by a developer that was only really well known to the hardcore core of JRPG fans, this is a Final Fantasy mainline game. So of course the standards are going to be higher. Like people are going to demand more than just a boring, forgettable game from this series. And that's exactly the.
They already got that by this point. They got 8.
Well,
No. Okay, look, dudes. I do get that you see 8 as worse than this, but there's a good reason why people see this as worse than it.
Oh, okay, well, here's the fake joke, though. As everyone always says, I mean, I get it, I don't care whether I'm in the minority or whatever in some things.
sure, neither do I.
Good for you. That said, though, that doesn't change the fact that there were legit reasons why people saw this as worse than 8. Want to know another thing that 8 did not do that this game did? Pretty much tarnished an entire generation for the Final Fantasy fans.
It had a very good game before it and a very good game
Let me-
after it. Almost
yeah.
immediately, 1 year after it.
Let-
Like I said in the past clips, but to be fair, you don't know. Well, okay, Pedro did mention it briefly at the very least, but someone, at least like me, but also Pedro, but a lot of other people, essentially had to deal with this for almost 5 years.
Yeah, exactly. See, you're looking at this from a hindsight perspective of years later when this franchise is no longer being shoved down people's throats. But back in the day, if this game had just come out and then it had no sequels and Square would just move on like they should have, then trust me, the hatred towards this game wouldn't have been nearly as big. The reason people hate this game so much nowadays is because this game was shoved down our throats over the course of 3 games as the only major console releasing of Final Fantasy games we had at the time. So basically, we didn't like this game, but Square, instead of moving on, kept shoving sequels down our throats. So obviously people are going to start resenting it more and more,
And consider this as well. Even with 8, I can definitely count we had much more good stuff to say about 8 than we did in 13. Like, even you, Dwibs, had more good stuff to say about 8 than you have with 13, because, let's be honest, nothing in 13 has really worked.
Yes.
The characters have not worked, the story pacing has not worked, hell, the storytelling itself has failed, courtesy of the data log.
Well, to defend myself, the worst of 8 has pissed me off more than the worst of this. The worst of this so far has just been kind of head-scratching, but the story just kind of seems to move on and forget about a load of things.
Yeah.
Which is, in and of itself, pretty bad storytelling, but you know what? Fair.
Well, 8 that's the thing, dude. Is, 8 does that too. In 8, we completely abandoned the Timber Revolution plot completely and never go back to it after the middle of disc 1. So it really is one of those cases. Go on.
Yeah, but as I said, it's like I'll give an example. Vanille's the worst character in this game, and in my opinion, Renoa is the worst character in 8.
Same.
yes, Vanille is the devil, but Renoa is more annoying.
No, I can see what you mean. Like, Vanilla, for as terrible of a person as she is, and for again, no offense to Georgia Van Kuilberg, for as terrible as her voice is, Renoa, yeah, the shit that Renoa does, and again, remember, allow me to. Just to showcase, remember, because Shiroi is usually very chill in our commentaries, but even Shiroi, at one point when she was reading Renoa's great line of, "Come on, Squall, I'm not good enough for you," and I'm hoping I'm pronouncing Shiroi's response properly. This isn't about you, you bitch! Is that correct, Shiroi?
I would also like to mention at the very end, with my final thoughts of that game, there is a good, substantial percentage of fans, or people who have played the game and know about it, that generally believes one good fan theory is that Renoa essentially manipulated the Squall into actually loving her. So, but to be fair,
which would be fine
that's fan speculation rather than thought, oh, this.
Which would be fine if the game, if that was what the game intended, but it's clearly not. Anyway, okay, guess what? Remember the Proud Clad from Final Fantasy VII?
Yeah.
This is in name only.
Hey,
yeah, Rush just shows up here for a very long time.
Oh, hi.
No matter. We will lay down our lives if that is what it takes to stop
he is still none the wiser.
We're on the same side here. We came back to stop all of this.
Nevertheless,
You are ice cream.
He literally just... Notice, he didn't even, negate what Snow said. He just said, yeah, you're still a C, so I gotta fight you. Never mind the fact that all hell and pandemonium are breaking loose. Nah, you're a C, so I better deal with you first.
Let me put things in this way, Whips. Imagine, since you like to bring it up, I'll use this example. Imagine if instead of improving things after Quantum Solace, they just kept giving us more Quantum of Solace movies instead of Skyfall and Spectre and A Good Time to Die.
Yeah, that's actually the actual page. That's actually a good. That's actually a good analogy. Since Final Fantasy and James Bond tend to share a few aspects, they all have. Each installment has wildly different tones, which some people prefer over the other. The quality consistency is so wild that you can pick almost any film as being your favorite or least favorite. There's a different cast of characters in each game, and each has its own kind of style.
It's one of those things where
consider this as well. Like, okay. In terms of bad people consider 13, you also have to consider the people who consider the 13 trilogy as one collective story, which, to be fair, even Square themselves have pretty much portrayed it as one full story. This game is considered bad because it is the first third of a god-awful story. And while, okay, you know what? If you see this if you see this as better or worse than 8, that's fine. But by the time of 13-2 Enlightening returns,
okay.
Oh no.
On that front, though, again, as Liz mentioned, let's just take it just for the context for the time being of just this first title.
Of course, keeping it to just this game in general, though. Like, 8 actually felt like it had a beginning, middle, and end. This one feels like it has... Well, it feels like it starts at a middle, lacks a proper beginning, and its ending... Oh, boy, the ending.
Well, we'll have to get it in 3 parts, if I recall correctly.
Like this. 8, again... One of the reasons I will still respect 8 at least kept to its own rules. This story constantly breaks its own rules to get the plot going forward. Which, you know what that's like, Drips? It's like the problem with Little Nemo, Adventures in Slumberland. If you have to constantly break the rules, there is pretty much no bout of story tension.
Which again, me and Joe already remarked on how the development of both of those products was actually remarkably very similar.
Well, if we're going by Bond examples in this scenario, neither the Day and Quantum of Solace took to their
okay.
So they're still shit.
Okay, let me put it this way. Before I ask that question, Shira, you wanted to say something?
No, I didn't say anything.
Okay. Okay. basically, Dibs. Okay, what's like a franchise that you like? And pick me a boring entry, not necessarily a god awful one, not necessarily the worst one, but a really boring one that's like you're bored by it, but at the same time you don't necessarily hate it.
We'll stick with Bob, but I'll say the man with the golden gun.
Okay, imagine if instead of improving after that with other entries, the Broccolis decided to go nuts and just start making a Man of Golden Gun sequels. That were just as boring. That was just as bad, if not worse.
Well, I mean, they made the world just not enough. So,
yeah. Like you probably would start your disdain for Man of a Golden Gun probably would increase just because of that, because it kept being shoved down your throat, right? Well,
you're welcome.
The World Is Not Enough was way later, though. I don't know if we can.
Yeah, well, I mean,
here's a better example, Dave. Imagine if the last Pierce Brosnan movie, I keep forgetting what it's called. Yeah. Imagine if that we did not rebooted the actual timeline and you got Casino Royale, which works and all at the very least was a better product, was moving into a different direction. But instead they made titles that follow directly with Dino Day with the same quality, if not worse, and that kept going for at least roughly 5-10 years. That's kind of similar feeling.
Tio, someone somewhere out there can answer that question with most of the Roger Moore era.
Easy now.
Yeah, I like the Roger Moore era, but whatever.
Oh, not me, just...
Oh, I'm not saying that to you. I'm not saying that to you. I'm saying in general.
Also, I'm gonna take that as you don't have an answer to the question.
And Pedro's also not the one to answer it. So.
Wait, to answer what? Sorry.
Because you like those movies.
Oh, I like them. I like the Roger Moore movies. Yeah. Honestly.
They're
if you watch them today and compare them to the standards of the better Craig movies, yeah, obviously they're not going to hold up. But the 1960s were a very campy time in Hollywood, so I understand why they are. It doesn't necessarily make them good, mind you, but yeah, but I think it's also important to remember the time that those movies were made, you know.
Yeah, that's also kind of the. There's one thing that's actually pretty hilariously ironic about those films. Well, the films at the minute. Well, since it started, actually. James Bond, the most British film series you can possibly think of, had its producers be originally American and Canadian.
That's Hollywood.
Yes. So, that particular family still owns the Bond film series to this day, even after the Amazon buyout. So.
Indeed. Alright, so basically now we're jumping around various bits of the road, and
that's essentially the final dungeon.
Okay, let me try my best lightning impression. Okay, guys, we've done it. We've come back to Cocoon. Now we're head up straight into Orphan's Cradle. Now what else do we need? Now what else?
Sorry, that was too much emotion. Do it again.
Now what? No, hold on. Let me finish. No. Now what else do we need? All right, a plan for what to do when we get there. We have no idea what the fuck we're doing.
Okay, to answer Tio's question, I mean, yeah, it wouldn't be very good, but I mean, since Die Another Day is no longer my least favourite Bond movie, I can still think to myself, it could be worse.
Oh, which one's the least favourite?
Quantum of Solace.
Oh yeah.
Wait, what's your...
Oh, 100%.
Oh, Quantum of Solace is terrible.
Well,
no.
my point being, you still have some hindsight. Like again, the idea behind it is that instead of at least getting something at the very least, decent, or at the very worst, or at the very least, boring, as you may put it, instead you will get something consistently, if not worse, kind of quality for a very long time. Again, that's
if I may. I think I have a good example. I think I have a good example to elaborate. Okay, you know how Pierce Brosnan came after a certain era Bond Wibs?
Timothy Dalton, yeah.
Yeah.
Imagine if, per se, the entirety of the Pierce Brosnan era was terrible. That's essentially the equivalent to what happened with the 13 trilogy. because the
Question.
entirety of the yes.
Did you even get anything like, but I know not main series stuff, but I'm gonna ask anyway. Like, did you even get any side stuff just to tide you guys over, or was it just back to back? Was it just back to back garbage?
Well, sure, there was the original Final Fantasy 14.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can. Okay. I'll let Teo answer you on his own. On my end, I had the Wilderness Review as well as the Kingdom Hearts series, as well as some other spin-offs that were there here and there, but not
I'm
much.
talking about Final Fantasy specifically, though.
Oh, Final Fantasy specifically, okay.
Because, we're talking about fans of that franchise who suffered specifically.
The CD was almost about to end.
Yeah.
Remember, it was the 012 was done in between the
Yeah.
first 13 and 13-2. Remember the whole story about ending must not be wrong. And yeah, I really enjoyed that game, I have to admit.
Yeah,
But again,
that one
like
too.
I said a couple of parts ago, early 2010 was also around the time where Square was essentially stopping development for a lot of their spin-off series. Saga and Mana were both dead. Star Ocean had just released its last title in a very long while with The Last Hope in 2010. Nier was in 2010 and also was the disbandment of Team Cavia, which still allowed Taro to do Drakengard 3, I think, in 2012. But you can tell that it really not as much budget as subcontract someone for a release they did not particularly care about because it was digital only in Europe, for example, and it was bombarded with a clusterfuck of DLC episodes. And there was the Idols buyout, meaning that Square was focused mostly on that. So strictly on Final Fantasy side, Shirai, no. The good news, if you can call it that way, is that this allowed instead to expand my horizons because, we're in that kind of situation, the best thing that you can do is to look elsewhere. And this allowed to actually make me recover a lot of franchises that I did not even consider back then. So to give minor credit where it's due, it led to something positive on my end, but it still doesn't change the fact that, as I mentioned at the end of 13-2 and Lightning Returns, albeit maybe more dramatic than I need to, it was still something that I technically grew up with giving the middle finger, and I just simply moved elsewhere.
To answer,
If I'm to be honest, I'm never gonna give a series credit for alienating me to the point where I had to discover new stuff. Don't get me wrong, discovering new stuff is great, but if it's the result of a series really becoming this half-baked or stupid, that's not something to praise.
To answer what Jover asked me earlier, I'll just put it in bullet points. Horrible editing, incomprehensible and boring plot, mediocre action ruined by said horrible editing, and it's all the proof that just because you're not even 2 hours long, don't mean you can't feel long.
I'm guessing Quantum of Solace came after The World's Not Enough.
Yes.
It's two things. One, yes, basically, that's the thing, Shiro. Yes, basically, the first Dissidia game was actually originally going to be a Kingdom Hearts fighter of sorts, However,
also involving Disney heroes and villains.
Yeah, however, that for whatever, I'm guessing maybe Disney didn't.
No, it was actually confirmed in interviews. Disney was not really keen on seeing some of their characters actually beating each other, and it's weird because the normal Kingdom Hearts series did allow you to do that with Sora, so I don't know what.
I'm guessing it's because on that game, that entire fighting thing would be the focus. So maybe for them that was a bit too much, but
before or after Disney Infinity was made, because you can totally have Disney characters.
I can elaborate on the details of Dissidia potentially next part. So go ahead, Pedro.
Basically it turned into Dissidia, which was basically the Final Fantasy Smash Brothers, basically the equivalent of that at least. So basically, Shiroi, back in these days where there wasn't that much stuff, Final Fantasy wise. It was mostly just the Dissidia series, which was given to us by Nomura.
There was one other thing that Final Fantasy fans got.
Go on.
What?
All the bravest.
Oh, God.
I was going to say, there were characters playable in Mario Sports Mix.
That was a thing, yeah.
Yeah, that was a thing.
Also technically 4 Heroes of Light on the DS, I suppose. The prototype Bravely Default.
Quickly before we...
What sure is that overall, Final Fantasy fans had it hella rough throughout the entire of the 7.
Hold on, Jova.
When I asked this, my idea was, maybe you had at least, some, ray of light in all this. It's like...
See, the thing is, Shiro,
not really.
No, see, the thing is, Shiro, the reason I was super excited for Versus 13 during these years is because the World in Zufi was a great demonstration of how brilliant of a game Nomura and his team can create. And so I would have, so it would have been really, so that's what kept me going at the time, basically.
And then Versus 13 got canned.
Yeah.
Again,
it didn't get canned. It's just that. At the time they
just in development hell.
is that Nomura was shifted to the Final Fantasy VII remake because he was taking too long with 15. Because remember, technically Versus 13 became 15, and that wasn't because they were changing already. The change from Nomura's vision to Tabata's vision happened after the name change. So the name change wasn't what caused it, to be fair. But
it wasn't like the idea that it got canned at some point, but then they later revealed that, oh, it's not canned, but it's been reborn.
Yeah, it's now Virum Rex on Quadratum.
He's also in the next
let me just
part.
quickly tell quickly before we finish though. I just remember one, Dwebs. Okay. All of us Bond fans usually agree that of all the actors, George Lazenby was probably the most lackluster of all the Bond actors, right? That's why he only stuck around for one movie. Remember, even back then, there was such a backlash that they literally gave Sean Connery a blank check just so he would come back for one more movie. So
yeah, look how that turned out.
Oh no, I get that. But imagine,
Is it a bad movie?
Diamonds Are Forever. We'll get to it.
I mean, yeah, we'll get to it. I'll tell you about it off comment.
The point is, imagine Dibs if MGM decide to be pig-headed and keep shoving George down our throats for like a good few number of movies, even though we all
believe it or not, Pedro, they did offer Lazenby a contract for quite a lot of Bond films after that, but he took the advice of his agent who thought Bond would become passé and said no.
Interesting. Well, you know my point, though, right? It would be. It's not that George Lazenby was a terrible actor necessarily. It's just that the fan base was officially in disapproval of him in the role, and yet instead of actually acknowledging that, they kept shoving him down our throat. So obviously, our resentment would increase with each new movie with him. It's one of those cases where companies will keep shoving a product that's disliked down people's throats, their resentment is only going to get bigger, and that's what happened with 13. They kept shoving the 13 cast and universe down our throats so much that we just got so tired of it, But anyway, we've dragged this on too long. See you for the next part, everybody.
Yeah.